Welcome to Just an Average Citizen, the podcast that helps to educate, inform, and empower you to make an impact in Abilene and the Big Country. So welcome back. It's been a little bit of a break since the last time I've done this, so thank you for checking out what's going on. I think just when I've got life figured out, it says, hang on just a second, let me show you what's going to happen. And so while I'd hoped to be consistent in doing a podcast throughout all of the changes, and you can see I'm in a new location, all these places that have changed over the last few months, it just didn't work out. So here I am, back and ready to let you know how you can be educated, informed to make an impact. And I will tell you, just when I think that I figured it out and I'm like, I'm not sure if there's really any hope in doing stuff because of the way it's set up, God shows me a way through, and he shows me a picture of how we can get through it. And so that's why I'm here helping to encourage you along the way, because I'm going to make these podcasts shorter. I'm not going to be going through all the stuff that happens in our city because it is something that you can learn to look up, and I have got it figured out. And so I want you to be empowered to figure it out. So if you need to know what I'm talking about or you don't have a clue, check out some of my previous podcasts because I went through agenda packets. I showed you how to find the recordings of the videos, the agendas that come out each week, when to check things. Fridays are a great time to check stuff, but that's not the only time they add stuff to the calendar. How to look in the calendar, how to figure out which board you need to know about so you can move forward in other areas. And there's a lot of things that we can do to learn how to make things more approachable for us so that we can be involved. And, I have been doing this now for over a year, and I took some time to process what I've learned in this last year. And so I just want to give you some feedback to know that, listen, this system is not set up for us to succeed. It's not meant for us to get engaged, to get our hands dirty and figure out how to be a source or solution to help figure out how to move forward. It is actually set up for them to run the show and us just to be okay to vote them in when it's time to vote in and trust the process. And I don't say that lightly, because when I started this journey over a year ago, it's been 2 years now, I really was trying to take it all in. And then I realized maybe I don't understand, and maybe it's my lack of understanding that's keeping me from taking hold of what opportunities are available for me. And so when I approached this last summer and said, okay, let's look and see what are the details, what is going on, how are we going to move forward, I really wanted to have a blank slate, like nothing to give me filters of how to approach things, how to understand or interpret things. It's like, here's the information. Okay, let's build upon it. And after building upon it, with as much neutrality as I could, I've come to conclusions of many who've gone before me. And that is that this is not a place for us to get involved unless you're part of the team that gets to control things. So while you may be like, I knew it, I knew there's nothing I can do, that is not the response I want you to take. I just want you to be aware of it. So as you approach things, you will understand it's not meant for it to be easy. It's not meant to make sense. And it's not meant for you to be patted on the back when you actually understand what's going on. It's meant for you to go into the approved method of doing things, or be constantly in conflict with those who are part of the game that's being played. And so do I think there are bad players in this? I haven't come to that conclusion. I think there's just a set way of doing stuff in our city. And there are people who've worked very hard to establish this program or this protocol. And while they may not be necessarily bad players, the system they have is not succeeding in actually improving it. It's just creating pretty well-controlled outcomes that I'm not sure are always what's best for the city. So I just want to let you know, the more we understand what's going on, the more we can honestly deal with it and move forward. And so that's what I want you to take away is we're learning more and more through every experience, and we're learning how we as citizens can start using our voices in ways that matter. And so I hope that you will stick with me and understand that this is not a place where we feel defeated or discouraged. This is a place where we get to learn so that we can work on helping, encouraging those who have kind of figured out this protocol to break down the unhealthy parts of it and maybe put in some more healthy parts, or more some parts that are functioning in a way that actually brings about good change for the entire city. So let me say this. I will encourage you to continue to watch board meetings if you need to understand how the city works. You got to watch the boards. You got to know that the Board of Adjustments is a place where things come through. The Planning and Zoning is where stuff comes through. A lot of that comes through on the consent agenda, and then they explain it very briefly. There's not a lot of transparency. There's not a lot of information that's just sitting there for you to be able to go, oh, okay, now I know what they're talking about. You're going to have to dig for it. But the good news is that's why I'm here to help you out. And if you need some information, please feel free to message me. Reach out to me. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. There's ways to get in touch with me. And I will just say, you reaching out is probably the best thing, because I'm not going to do it in a public setting, because there are things that we have to learn how to. There's strategies that we need to learn in order to battle well in this process, and doing that publicly is not probably the best place. Also, if you're one that's watching this going, wow, I don't know what she's talking about. I've never had any problems, because I've had several friends tell me, look, I don't have these problems. That's because you're in step with those who are running the show. And I'm not saying there's a big bad background agency that's working at it. I'm just saying that if you watch the way they behave, there is a group that behaves a certain way, and if you don't step in line to that or follow that system, then you're going to be on the outside looking in. And so if you've not been on the outside, that's okay, but I just want you to know there are several experiences that are happening in Abilene, those who kind of go along with what's approved and accepted, and those who might challenge it more than is preferred. And so we don't want to discourage people from expressing their opinions, but we do want to at least acknowledge there are two tracks. And what's funny is in the last couple of weeks, it's neat how God's brought people who've been doing this a lot longer than I have. He's kind of crossed our paths, and it's been really fun to get to hear their wisdom and have conversations with them so that I can understand how they've already been doing this, and they've paved the way for us to even step into greater things. So again, I'm not trying to disparage anyone, but I learned once I graduated from college that sadly, the way people behave in high school doesn't change, because that's called human nature. And we actually have to continue battling some of those petty and small-minded ideas of how we should behave socially with each other, and how that translates into how we run our government and all those, any organization, you're going to find these things. So it's not like this is specific to Abilene or specific to our city council or specific to the organization, you pick the name. It is just a part of those who struggle with walking in their identities and believing who God says they are, and those who feel the need to be validated by outside sources. And once you understand that's the game, then you can battle better and how to respond to whatever situation comes your way. So now that's where we've been. I probably am going to pause a little bit on not starting back up with a book by the bite, because there's so many books that I would really like you to pay attention to and listen to that I've already done, because that's really important in the conversation of things that we're battling here. And the more we learn about that foundation, the better we can steward our time better and not having pointless conversations that aren't going to go anywhere if we don't understand how the game is played or how the scenario is set up for us or anyone in Abilene. So that's what I'm going to encourage you to do, is if you haven't taken time to listen to those Book by the Bites, please do, because there's so many more books I could give that would be great, but we're going to pause there and just focus on how do we move forward and what does it look like. I'm probably going to pull back a little bit more of the neutrality. Again, I've been saying that for a while now, but we can't get things done if we're not going to address issues. And so what I'd like to do at the last bit of time I have here is just point out that we had some exciting things happen in the city council on Thursday, and that is something we need to talk about. And the reason why I want to talk to you about it is because coming up in July is what's called the budget workshop. And the budget workshop is something, if you are available, to at least come on Monday morning of that week when they announce it. So I don't know when they're going to announce it. It's typically in July. It may be July 22nd based on kind of the timing of what I saw last year. So I'll be watching for that. But what you need to do is come and listen to the budget. If you can't listen to the budget, I don't think that's the end all be all, because there's not a lot of opportunity for conversation there. There is a way to look at the proposed budget for 2025. And hopefully in the weeks to come, I can break that down and help make it easier for you to understand, because I think we need to understand what's going on with our budget and the way it works. It's a fund budget. It operates a little differently than like a household budget. And it's something that we need to understand. So what I want to do is point out for this first video I have is the one for the dog park. So let me tell you a little bit about this dog park. This dog park has been in the works for a while. They knew when then they began to organize the flat fields behind the Abilene Youth Sports Authority, Dodge Jones Center. They knew that they were going to probably move that dog park. I think it was probably more just it was easier to move it. It wasn't a very pretty dog park. It was something that needed to be fixed. And here was an opportunity to kill two birds with one stone, but it was going to cost $500,000. And knowing what we know now, it seems really problematic that they would even agree to move it, because it seems like there could have been other ways to address it. But I'm not in all the conversations, so I'm not going to completely act like I know everything and I should be able to decide everything that they do. But what the problem was, it was already expensive at $500,000. It closed the dog park down for at least 6 months because in relocating it, they haven't started building it. So now they brought to the table on Thursday a desire to fund the new project. And what was interesting is they upped it to almost $1 million. It was not quite $1 million. And Councilman Blaze Reagan decided that it would be a good idea probably if we tabled this in order to see if there was a cheaper way to do it, because it seemed like it was a little pricey. I believe then Robert Hanna explained that the restrooms alone cost like $400,000, so it's an expensive thing, and we don't want people, using the restroom out there where there's no public restroom. So sadly, even with the request to just look in to see if there was a cheaper option, everyone else on the council decided that nope, Robert Hanna had, I guess, done all his homework and he deserved to be trusted blindly in a sense, because they didn't even really entertain a conversation of what things they could do to do some cost savings. So 6-1, it failed, or 6-1, it passed at $1 million. One of the other interesting things that is why I'm bringing this up is because he mentioned the cost of it being so high. And when you're having a discussion at the end of the meeting to talk about let's see here, it's down here. So if you look down here, they also had a discussion later in the same meeting about the budget reductions. And I thought Councilman Reagan brought up a great point. If we're talking about having to take out loans because things are so expensive and we're not able to cover them, then we should look at reducing the cost of a dog park. I did find it also interesting, and I can't remember exactly who said it, but, they said that, to not give back this dog park was it was not acceptable, because we promised the people a dog park. They deserved a dog park for, for being a citizen in our community. And again, this plays out very interesting because when we get to the later part of the conversation, which is the budget reductions section of this meeting, it was brought up that basically we're having to cut some more costs because sales tax are going flat. They're anticipating them going flat. They've already had this conversation back in March and about how they're having to freeze some positions. They're not adding to the general funds. They're creating some other steps to make sure that we don't go spend more than we have to, and they're trying to keep some cash flow. And so this discussion was, again, we needed to do some more reductions. And what I've learned about the city is that there's some complicated processes. There's what's called a minor improvement project fund that they have. They take 5% of all sales tax, and they just kind of have these pet projects that they decide on, kind of in general. I can't remember if it's going to be something that they'll talk about at the budget meeting, but there's no list that we as the citizens can actually look at to see how they're going to order it so that we can say, hey, this is a priority. It's basically the council's priority. And so they have this list off to the side so that 5% gets spent on things that they want to do. And there's not really transparency, and it makes it hard for us to navigate through this. Well, what happened is that the city manager said, listen, we've got some projects that I believe he said were fully funded, but he wanted to pause on those and instead take out a loan or a certificate of obligation so that we would have cash on hand. And, what's problematic is one of those is a trail ramp that we agreed to to be able to have a foresting plane come in who helps with fires. And they needed a bigger ramp for those planes. And that was $1.9 million. Then they also needed to do some microwave radio upgrades, which was, I think, $740,000. They also had promised pickleballs, which was $1.3 million, which was probably going to cost more like $2.1 million when it was all said and done because of inflation. And then they also had the Abilene Heritage Square commitment for the upcoming new library, which was $3 million. And so he indicated that we needed to pause this money, keep it, take out a loan, and have this money available. So if we had some other needs that we weren't expecting. And so that's confusing to me because the minor improvement project, these are things we're supposed to do. It's a to-do list. It's not something that has to be done. The pickleball courts didn't have to be done. Sadly, the American Heritage Square was a commitment we had already made, as is the ramp. And of course, we need to make sure our communication systems are up and working. So there was really only the pickleball that was kind of iffy, and having already approved $1 million for the dog park, it was confusing that we would, throw another almost over $2 million into another recreational scenario for people. And I understand they have a vision of bringing people to the city, but the problem is I sense that there's not a big priority on making sure the people here in Abilene who live here and enjoy Abilene actually enjoy Abilene. They're always looking to the people who are coming and not taking care of what is going on with the current citizens. So when it was brought to their attention that this is something they plan for, they should have used it, shouldn't take out a loan if they've already planned for it. And Robert Hanna's, the city manager's response was, listen, if we don't start doing something, we're going to have to, the next go is police and firemen losing their positions. And so that is a scare tactic because we are not at a place where we're going to have to start cutting this, compromising the safety of our city. So once we start to learn how these conversations go and we realize it's just a scare tactic, then we can start saying, listen, we're not okay. And so this is a place where you can have impact. You can actually email the city council and say, listen, the pickleball, it can wait. We need to spend the money. The other thing that was interesting about the pickleball, now that I am talking to you about it, is that they were very concerned about infringing upon some potential upcoming businesses that were going to bring pickleball to our city. And I think that's just a great and wise thing. We don't want to be in competition with private companies. However, the Abilene Youth Sports Authority was a public-private partnership that did that very thing. And I know it's caused some problems for other privately owned entities in our city. So it seems like there's also not only a scare tactic that happens in our city when things we need to be guided in the right direction, but there's also hypocrisy. If one business wants to do something or if another, then it just depends on where you are in that approved category. Are you approved or you're not approved? Because it's okay to provide competition with the city's money for certain entities, but it's not okay for, the pickleball. So I'm starting to learn that, there is a way that they try and massage the information so that we'll kind of step in line and do what they want. And here's where we get to say, hey, listen, we're not okay with it. So we need to make sure that, they have paused, and I'm looking at this video right now, they have paused all non-profit partners, which is good because, we don't need to do things. One last thing I'm going to touch on, because I was trying to keep this under 15 minutes, and I'm not sure I've done a very good job of that, but they also said that the Abilene Heritage Square was kind of like, oh no, they've gotten their funding. We've got to take care of this. But to my knowledge, the Abilene Heritage Square was already a year behind in their funding. So this wasn't a surprise. Suddenly it was, we just didn't put aside money in our fund budget to prepare for these things. So when it comes to demolishing the two rec centers, what we have is they realized they could save $1 million by doing them at the same time. So they're going to continue the programs at the rec centers through the summer and end in September. And then the rec centers will no longer have programs like they've had in the past because they're going to be tearing down two buildings. They've decided to close down Cobb and the Rose Rec Center, although I do believe, I'm not sure about the Rose now that I'm saying that out loud, they are going to continue the senior citizen activities at the Rose Center. But when asked about the $1 million savings, what was going to happen with that, Robert Hanna, our city manager, said, well, it's going to be spent on other construction costs, and now we won't have to come back and ask for more money when the construction costs exceed the bond that we approved for $28 million in November. So there's a lot of interesting information that we can take away from this, and we can see how things happen and how we can better combat it. So here's where I want to turn and shift a little bit to the street maintenance fee appraisal board. That happened on Thursday. As usual, most people don't know that that's happening, and they don't know the projects that are going on. And I can do my best to tell people. The city does what they need to do to tell people, but ultimately it's about us starting to be engaged and pay attention. So here's where it matters. There are probably 20 projects, I think. There's, the full depth repair on the streets. There's partial depth, and then there's linear. And the linear are just surface ones. There's more of those, but I think it's like $42 million in linear surface projects that we have on our list to do. And we only have $7.5 million to accomplish these street projects with the fees that we're collecting, because the last time I understand inflation came through, there was a need to pull back. And so the city pulled back on street maintenance. And that's kind of where we're at now, and why we're in this bind that, street maintenance was not maintained. And I don't even know exactly when that happened, but we're still learning and we're understanding so that we don't make the same mistakes. So what happens is they sit in the board. During the board meeting, they have a list of projects to complete, and they just kind of go through, well, I think this one's important. Well, maybe this one. Well, we didn't do this one last time. And they just kind of figure it out. And guess who was successful? Lytle Estates. The neighborhood of Lytle Estates showed up at that meeting, all 16 of them, and said, we want our project done. It's been not taken care of for a long time. Please pick our project. And guess what? One of the board members said, well, they showed up and wanted us to do it. So now we're going to do it. So here's the thing is all those other neighborhoods, all those other areas that probably had just as dire needs as Lytle Estates, their neighborhoods got bumped because no one from those neighborhoods showed up. And so that's where it's important. There are key things that we need to do as citizens to be engaged and be involved. And good news is now you can say, wait a minute, I don't like those suggestions here. You need to pick this project instead. I don't know if it can be changed. Honestly, for some reason, there was no action set for them to do last night at the meeting, or on Thursday, I guess it was Thursday night at the meeting. And so they will now vote on these projects. I think there's 6 of them approved to be for the fiscal 2025 year. And they will vote on those on September 5th. So if there's something that you want to have input on, this is the time you have input. And once they vote on those as a board, they send that to the city council, and then the city council will vote on that later in the month of September. So there are things that we can do, and there are ways that we can be involved, but it takes each of us taking some ownership and deciding where it's going to be. And I think that this is a great time to start learning about stuff because, again, I think they do behave very much within the legal confines that they're allowed to, but it seems like there's just some priorities that aren't quite as openly communicated that allow us to see what's going on. And I will say that I was blessed to get to have a conversation with the city manager a few weeks ago, and it was so fun because I'm probably one of the few people excited to talk to a city manager about his job. But what he told me is that he likes to be transparent beyond his requirements because he wants people to understand what's going on. And I think that's our situation. I think we have them doing the bare minimum of what they have to do to communicate with what's going on, and we have to do a lot more effort and work to make sure we understand what's going on. And I actually told someone who was at the city council meeting, I said, listen, we really don't think there's a whole lot of things going wrong, except when we can't find the information out, then it makes us wonder what is going wrong, what is not being told to us. And then it creates people who are concerned about things that maybe aren't even real concerns, but the lack of transparency has caused us to operate this way. And so we're going to keep working together. We're going to keep seeing what we can do to educate and inform ourselves so that we can make an impact here in Abilene in the big country, but it's going to take some effort on our parts. And if you can't attend a city council meeting, watch a city council meeting. If you can't watch it, look over the agenda and see what they're talking about, what ordinances they're approving, what things what plats they're changing, what zonings they're changing. Is there something that is connected to your area where you live or you work? And then if there is, then that's the part that you take hold of. You don't have to take care of a whole city. It's just too much for us to bite off at one time. So I hope that helps. I hope that makes sense. And I do think that, while we want to give them the benefit of the doubt, if it is so hard for me to even figure out how to get information, like I don't even know who to talk to ask a legitimate question, because sometimes they'll answer me and sometimes they won't. And I don't know why sometimes they don't answer me. I don't know why some of them do and some of them won't. And they don't have really this healthy flow of information going. And so we're going to keep working on that. So sorry for the podcast being a little long, but it's going to try and stay under 15 minutes in the future because there's so much more that I want to talk about that we can do and we can make an impact on. And I think that's what's exciting to me is that this is them operating without many people really doing much of anything. Can you imagine if 5% of us just got more involved and started paying attention more? And if you want to know how to get connected and involved with people who are trying to do this very thing, or being around other people who are concerned and want to make positive changes in our city and not just complain about it, we want to actually see what we can do to make sure these streets get fixed, rather than being ignorant of the fact that there's limited funds and they can't just spend everything. Everything goes to a certain, it has a certain designation. And if we're like, every time they spend money, we say, why aren't you fixing the streets? Then that shows that we don't understand how the fund budget works. So we have to be educated and made aware of what's going on. So hope that helps you. I'm excited to continue making sure that we do our part as citizens to be informed and engaged. And so if you're willing, let's join in and wait for the next podcast in the next week, or look on the city website to see what's coming up so that you can know how you can be more aware of what's going on. The best place to start is look at those financials. That's on the homepage, and you can look up old budgets. You can look up our debt that we owe. You can look up the check register of where they actually spend money out of our city's account. I mean, I didn't even realize that was there to pay attention to. So there's a lot of stuff that we can keep learning about. So I hope that helps. And again, we're not enemies. We're all on the same team trying to make our city better. We just got to learn how to make sure we can all be included. And right now, I'm not sure that's the case. So let's see what we can do to make that happen, because in all things, we want to make sure we're doing what God's called us to do, and being a part of what happens in a city is very much a part of His kingdom, and being good stewards of His of the influence He's given us. So let's make sure we're doing our part. So let's make sure that we continue to do that. And I look forward to talking to you soon about how we can continue to educate ourselves, be informed, and be empowered to make an impact in Abilene and the big country. Until next time.